I'm David Levy. Oh yeah, I'm Dave, that's Jeff. I don't think we said that. Well, my story is about youthful arrogance and naivete, and it begins as many of the stories from our lives do, with a quick game of Name That Tune. Now I've had the time of my life, and I've never felt like, if you know it, just shout it out, spare something. And I swear it's the truth, and I thank you very much. That was, of course, the time of my life, the theme song, the Oscar-winning theme song from the hit movie and instant classic, Dirty Dancing. When that movie came out in 1987, my mother fell in love with it. So when the soundtrack came out just a little while later, our then reigning queen of the Cars cassette deck, Donna Summer, was just going to have to find somebody to love her someplace else. Because from that point on, it didn't matter who you were, how far you were going. If you were in the car with my mother, you were subject to now I'd the time of my life. Now I'd had it over and over and over and over and over and over again. It was more than a little bit maddening, and therefore more than a little bit ironic, that song should become the unofficial theme song of my spring break vacation, my junior year of college, just a few years later. When I first arrived at the University of Virginia, I went out in search of the quintessential college experience. And having no older siblings upon whom to draw a definition of the quintessential college experience, I gathered my information from the same place that I learned a lot of things growing up, Hollywood. And the #1 movie of all time about college life is, of course,
Animal House.
Animal House, that's correct. And I thought I should go join a fraternity. Well, it just so happened that my mother had a friend with a kid at UVA a year ahead of me, and he was already in a fraternity, and she said, why don't you go find this guy? So I did at Alpha Epsilon Pi, AE Pi. It's a Jewish fraternity, which I would later find out by visiting some of the houses in the northeast of the United States that it can be a very popular fraternity. I assumed in the northeast US because the Jewish population there is larger and more assimilated into daily life. Down in Virginia, not so much. For whatever reason, it was a decidedly unpopular fraternity, but I found the guy I went there to look for, and I liked him, and I liked the other brothers, and it was a good fit for me. Mostly because it was sort of like a low-key fraternity, and that was really my speed. Now, I know I went there looking for the Animal House experience, but there's really only so much that a person can take. So I joined this fraternity, and I was enjoying myself, and of course I realized that I still didn't have the quintessential college experience. So when some of my fraternity brothers came to me in my junior year and said, hey, you want to go with us to the Bahamas for spring break? I had to give it some serious thought. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't just jump at the chance, but I had a few mental blocks I had to get over first. First of all, I hate beaches. So, there's that. Second, I had traveled very little up to that point in my life, and I was a bit xenophobic. I didn't like the idea of putting myself geographically at the whim of somebody else's local law enforcement, thanks in no small part to Sylvester Stallone's portrayal of John Rambo in First Blood. I told you I learned a lot from Hollywood growing up. And lastly, but certainly not least, I was a big introvert back then. I'm still a bit of one now, but back then it was terrible. I'll give you an idea. I was the social chairman of my fraternity that year. And so for every party that was scheduled, I would hire the band, I would buy the kegs, I would schedule the pledges to work the front door, I'd get the whole party started, and then I'd go back to my room to watch television. So in my mind, the party that I was avoiding out there was 1/50th of what I would be in the middle of in the Bahamas. But it occurred to me that this could be my last best chance for the quintessential college experience. So I eventually told my fraternity brothers yes, not because I wanted to, obviously, but because I felt like I should. At that point, I just put myself in the hands of my fraternity brothers. And they booked a trip that flew out of Philadelphia, which was a 5-hour drive from Charlottesville, Virginia. So I had a car, I decided to drive, and 4 other fraternity brothers, all of our luggage in the car, driving to Philadelphia, and we're yucking it up and being obnoxious and laughing a lot and having a good time. And any sort of hesitation that I was having about this trip was beginning to dissipate. And I thought, yeah, you know, fraternity brothers, all for one and one for all, you know? And I thought, if I just stay with these guys, if I stick with them, I'm going to have a good time. So with that attitude, we finally arrive at our hotel in the Bahamas, and the party starts right away. I mean, everybody that's staying at that hotel arrives at the same time, and we all just throw our bags into our rooms. And we start our party around the pool there at the hotel. So day 1 of 7 of my spring break vacation, my junior year, is spent sunning and swimming and drinking and sunning and drinking and sunning and drinking and sunning, so that by the end of the day I am burnt to a crisp and vomiting my guts out. Both ends of my body, if you don't mind. So for the next day, day 2 of 7, I'm looking for a change of pace, and when my fraternity brothers say, hey, we're going to the beach today, I say fine. So I throw on a pair of sweats and a long-sleeve t-shirt, some sunglasses and a hat. I grab the blanket off the bed and spread it out on the beach, and I assume the position right in the middle of the blanket from where I can watch all the other people having a good time. Oh, they're swimming in the waves, they're playing beach volleyball, hey, some people are even parasailing. And I'm enjoying it all from the center of my blanket in what I like to call the introvert's position. Avoiding the sand around me the way a little child will stand on the furniture and avoid the carpet pretending it's lava. So when my fraternity brothers finally say, hey, you want to get out of here? I'm like, yeah. So we head back towards the hotel, leaving the beach for what will be the last time for me on this trip. And we pass the only other thing it seems there is to do in the Bahamas besides go to the beach and party around the pool. And that was the casino. Well, we could all count to 21, so we arrange ourselves around the blackjack table, and I immediately begin to hemorrhage money. So that by the end of day 2 of 7 of my spring break vacation, I'm down to just enough money left to eat for the rest of the trip. That's okay, I wasn't really planning any big activities, but I'd had this buffer of cash, and now I did not have that. So at the start of day 3 of 7, when my fraternity brothers say, hey, let's go back to the casino, I say no. I cannot afford to lose any more money. And they say to me, David, don't worry about it. If you lose all your money, we will spot you. Okay. And I can still remember the last of my money leaving my possession. I had just lost the last hand of blackjack that I could afford to join in, and that left me with a single $2.50 chip. At the same time, the waitress comes up with this free cocktail that I had ordered. They love giving you free drinks as long as you're gambling at the tables. And traditionally, you would tip with a $1 chip. But all I had left was $2.50, and this seemed extravagant to me in my broke-ass college way of thinking. Plus, it was literally the last money I have left. Please remember, ATM was still a new technology, and I did not have an ATM card. And as a junior in college, I did not yet have a credit card. And so I explained all of this to the waitress by way of apologizing for the fact that I am not about to tip her. And she says, well, I brought you a drink, you should tip me. And I say, well, I know, but this is all the money that I have left. And I guess she's heard it all before, because she's very insistent. And she even turns to the dealer and says, make him tip me. And he's like, I can't do anything about it. And she's like, well, I want to tip. You should tip me, tip me, tip me, tip me. And finally, I practically throw it at her because I just wanted her to shut up. And I figured $2.50, nothing. There's really not that much difference. And now I'm completely destitute. So when we leave the casino that night, I turn to my fraternity brothers and say, hey, can somebody spot me $10? So I have some cash in my pocket. Oh, well, Dave, we all lost a lot of money too, and now we really can't afford to lend you any. And I said, hey, now wait a second. You said if I lost the rest of my money, you guys would spot me. They're like, yeah, that was before we lost the rest of my money, our money too. And so I realized that one for all and all for one had just turned into every man for himself. And my original plan, this idea that if I stuck with these guys, I would have a good time, relied upon them sticking with me too, which I hadn't considered. So I was angry, both at them and a little bit at myself, and I stormed off ahead of them back to the hotel. Everybody was standing around the pool this night, but they weren't partying the way that they had been partying the past 2 nights. They were like in these little groups, and they were murmuring to each other about some incident. And it turns out that some guy on spring break who was staying at the hotel, I knew him a little bit just by virtue of the fact that he was at the hotel with us, had gotten into a fight with some of the locals playing pool at the pool table in the hotel. And this fight culminated, the story went, with one of the locals picking up 3 pool balls and smashing this guy in the back of the head so that an ambulance had to take him away so he could get stitches. And this incensed me, much more than it should, I'll admit, but I'd had all this casino alcohol for free. I was in this really sort of angry state of mind, and And this incident played heavily into my xenophobia. Like, this guy was at the mercy of, some place out of his geographical comfort zone. And so I was incensed, and I said, somebody must pay for this. And since the aggressors were not there, and I don't know what I would have done if they were, but since they weren't there, I felt that the culprit here was the hotel, and they should pay. So I grabbed this garbage can, and I dragged it over to the side of the pool. And by the way, I'm not proud of this. I'm not proud of any of this, but particularly this. But I dragged this garbage can over by the side of the pool, and I shout, "Who wants to help me throw this garbage can into the pool?" Now, I've had a lot of opportunity to look back on this moment over the years. And every time I do, I get really close to being able to confidently state that this was just grandstanding, that I never had any intention of that garbage can ending up in that pool. But I will never know for sure, because the opportunity to find out was taken away from me. Because when I shouted, "Who wants to help me throw this garbage can into the pool?" from over here somewhere came this voice, "I will," and then this foot, I have no idea whose, and then the garbage can was in the pool. I didn't do it, but I sure felt like I did. So my fraternity brothers catch up to me, and they grab me by the arm, and they're like, "Dave, you gotta lay low, man." And they shove me into the hotel room like, "Dave, you gotta calm down." And they go scout out to see what's going on. The hotel staff is pissed, and then nobody's gonna be able to swim until they shock the water, whatever they have to do. And like, I've got a mini version of this at the time, and I gotta go incognito, and I shave it off. I guess it worked, and nobody ever fingers me for this crime, but my fraternity brothers, either partially out of pity or fear, perhaps, managed to gather up like $4 and give it to me so that I have some money. So the next morning, at the start of day 4 of 7 of my spring break vacation, I take my $4 and I walk a mile up the road to this street side vendor where I buy a foot-long hot dog and a regular-sized bun and a Coke. That's $4. And I walk back to the bar and eat that on the way, and then sit down at the bar in the hotel and watch whatever's on television and eat from the bowl of free salty peanuts. That is now my routine for the second half of my spring break vacation. Twice a day, begging for $4 so I can walk a mile up the road and get a hot dog and a Coke, come back and watch TV and eat salty peanuts. And to add insult to injury, what's on that television? But Dirty Dancing. I don't mean it's on when I get there the first time. I mean they have it on videotape, so when it ends, they rewind it and play it again and again and again. So while my fraternity brothers are outside having the time of their lives in the Bahamas, I'm once again being subject to now over and over and over and over and over. And when for about the 200th time, Patrick Swayze was telling Jerry Orbach that nobody puts baby in a corner, the hot dogs and the peanuts and the Cokes were all making me feel like I wish I could just find a corner to curl up in and die. My quest for the quintessential college experience had been a complete and utter failure. But what's funny about all of this is that, as an introvert, I spent a lot of time hiding behind the lens of my 35mm point-and-shoot camera, and somehow on this trip I managed to take 6 rolls of film. And to look at these pictures, it sure looks like I had a great time on this trip. Which makes me wonder about the quintessential college experience and the allure of vacations and spring breaks in particular. It makes me think that all of these things are just myths created by Hollywood and perpetuated by schlubs like me who take pictures of people smiling and having a good time. Because I know that it wasn't, but to look at these pictures, it sure looks like my spring break vacation was the time of my life.